Okay, I was waiting to see if some more people were coming in. Okay, so we are live. Ready? Let's go ahead and go. Okay, hello everyone. Today is Sunday, July the 9th. My name is Tahisha Williams. I am the owner of City Center Notary here in Virginia, also the owner of TD Alliance. This is Black Mental Health Month for the month of July. And I am your special guest host today on the Notary War Room with Tiger Toledo. He is allowing me to host this special event, which we have Cameo T. Harris, who is licensed clinical social worker, my best friend, known each other now, it's been what, 30 plus years that we've known each other from school. She is my baby's godmama. So just a couple of things about her. So this was, as far as mental health, I knew she was one of the main people to speak on this topic because this is definitely her baby, is her passion. So I had wanted to bring this to the forefront because it still tends to be taboo, and especially in the Black community. So, and I know it's something she's passionate about. So actually at this time, I'm gonna let her go ahead and start off, Cameo, with, introducing yourself and just telling us about you and how you got into this.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Cameo Tuesday Harris. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, as Tahisha has said. I've been working in mental health since the age of 19. So I have 31-ish years, almost 30 years, it'll be 30 years this year, working in a plethora of areas for his mental health. I've been in the urban areas for his working in public housing. I've been in the prison system. I've worked with the military. I worked in Department of Social Services. And for the last 5 years, I've owned and operated my own practice. I'm here today at Available Mental Health, but I also co-own Creative Milestones, Behavioral Health Care Services. Both of the practices are here in Newport News in City Center area. We focus here at Available Mental Health on adult psychiatry. So we do outpatient traditional therapy as well as medication management. We have a true MDT team, which is a multidisciplinary team here. We have a psychiatrist and 2 nurse practitioners on board, along with myself as a therapist, and I have some interns. Creative Milestones is a community-based services where we go out into people's homes. We have mental health skills building and intensive in-home at that location. And I also do outpatient as well. As Tahisha said, this is my passion. My mother always used to say I was a broken wing killer. I've been taking care of people since I was 4 years old, and I love it. I love it. As she said, mental health is it's at a peak. It's getting ready. I guess I should say hit a peak, because we're just coming out of the concept of survival for COVID. And so this is when we'll typically see an influx of symptomology. So I'm here to answer whatever questions and kind of introduce what I think that you guys can do for the mental health field, because I have talked to her in some length about what I think that you guys come in and we can kind of intersect and help each other. Would you like me to expound on that, or just go into how you want to do it?
Well, for one, what you said you started this when you were 19. So what made you actually want to get into the field? Was it something, that you saw growing up, or especially because, with you having been a military brat, as they say, and, living in different regions of the US or the world, were there different things that you saw that made you get to the point where you felt like something needed to be addressed as far as people's mental health?
Okay, so my original introduction to mental health is a blessing and a curse, you know, like most African-American families. My uncle suffered from schizophrenia, and my grandfather, my paternal grandfather, was also schizophrenic. So it's a genetic marker in my family for schizophrenia. Of course, when we were growing up, we had no idea what schizophrenia was. My grandmother actually called it schizophrenic. Uh, and so we just knew my uncle would have periods where he would become aggressive, delusional, hallucinate. And so I didn't know. And I was what they would call one of his target people when he would become symptomatic. He had a disposition for disliking me. And so I wasn't afraid of him because he was not a aggressive person who had schizophrenia. He just would become verbally aggressive, but not physically aggressive. And so it shaped my understanding of mental health. And then my mother also has 40 years as a mental health provider. She worked at a center that was called Ludeman Center in Howe. And so they dealt with back then what they call profound retardation. So they had the children who would now be considered learning, not what they call ID or autistic. But back then they would call severe or mild retardation. And so I grew up seeing my family taking care of other people. And so it made me have a ear to taking care of people, and I enjoyed it.
Okay. So with what kind of experiences have you had as far as, do you mainly deal with adults, with children? What fields or what parts of mental health do you deal with?
Currently, I deal with a lot of outpatient for as adults. However, I have had the pleasure of working in all the striations. I've worked with little babies, I would say from kindergarten on up to high school. I do have intensive in-home on the community-based side, but I don't necessarily see them every day or more because I'm the clinical director and co-owner. I oversee other people who have the direct care of them. I do see some children in outpatient. I go as young as 7. I try not to go under 7 for individual because it becomes a family systems issue at that point. A lot of times parenting issues and stuff like that. But right now, I've been dealing with a lot of depression, anxiety, people just feeling overwhelmed, grief because of loss from COVID, loss of job, loss of normalcy, feeling overwhelmed. But for over 13 years prior to here, I worked with the Armed Forces of the United States Army, and I did a lot of post-traumatic stress disorder and military life family type issues.
Okay, and with you mentioning post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, it has been mainly known as something to affect the military. But on the civilian side, would you say that also civilians, ones who don't have any connections to the military, also are affected by it? And what kind of things may affect the civilian as far as PTSD?
Absolutely. So the history of PTSD, the actual coined name of PTSD came from rape victims, people who had suffered sexual assaults, because then it was called combat mind, right? So PTSD is the concept that either you or someone you love is at risk of dying or harm, great harm. So for me, I have what I always tell them is that I have an issue with people turning into me because I was T-boned about 5 years ago. So anytime a person turns into me in traffic, it makes me startled, right? So that would be called PTSD because I'm having a reaction to a previous event, right? It's not compounded. Some people have compounded PTSD. Okay, for a lot of people in our community or African-American urban communities, I should say, of course, we have PTSD from gun violence or violence, period, right? It could be domestic violence as well as gun violence, or just, seeing people injured on a daily basis. So we see that a lot of times when it comes to the babies, when they go to school, they're dysregulated, and people are saying that the child is ADHD when they really have PTSD, right? They're not sleeping, they're agitated, they're really protective about their spaces and things of those natures. So another thing that you can see for is PTSD, any type of situation that you really think is life altering. You could be a house fire, right?
Mm-hmm.
You could have domestic violence, right? So if you're a domestic violence victim, or if you were a child who grew up in a home with domestic violence. What else? It's so many different things that can cause it, because it's just the fear that you thought that you're going to lose your life that you love. And a lot of times, like what I was trained with PTSD is the five senses, right? So the triggers that people experience is the five senses. It could be scent, taste, touch, smell, and sight, right? Or hearing. I forgot the hearing. I said taste twice. I scent twice. So when you go to things like I said, for me, when a person turns in, that's the visual of someone coming into me. It's not that they actually are going to hit me, but in my mind, it triggers me that I'm going to be hit. So then I have it like a jerk reaction. What I tell people a lot of times when it comes to the senses and different things, you don't have an ability sometimes to even know what your triggers are, because when you're surviving, you're taking note of what's happening to you. So if we take PTSD and apply it to COVID, like people who lost a lot of family members or had COVID and thought they were going to die, right? So every time they get sick or someone around them gets sick, they may find themselves feeling anxious or overwhelmed, or some people even become angry, like, I can't believe I'm here again. And so it's really important to, if you think that you're having something, start taking some type of journal so you could keep a track. So then if you should ever come and talk to someone, you can say, okay, I noticed this pattern. Because, the first thing I would ask you is, when did you notice that you started feeling some off or felt like you were having some difficulties? And so it gives us a reference.
Okay, so let me ask you this. With it being Black Mental Health Month, and you have been in the field for so long, have you noticed a great or a definite shift from, say, previously, as far as Blacks, African Americans, what have you, seeking help or therapy up until now? Because it seems like over the past few years, it's been brought more to the forefront with people like, Charlemagne from Breakfast Club, and, other people bringing it to the forefront now, speaking openly about them seeking therapy for mental health reasons. So over the course of the years that you've been in it, how have you seen the shift, especially for the African American community?
I think that it's been a shift in what we would consider middle class and higher income bracket people actually seeking help. I think that the underserved has always sought help because they were the people who intersected with the hospitalization, right? Or incarceration because of their mental health. But people who saw themselves as capable of managing their mental health, or either that they were too good to have mental health issues, right? I would say COVID has unearthed something that, like I tell people, I don't like research, but a researcher, an epidemiologist, is going to study the influx of what has happened with COVID. There has been a breakdown in communication, a breakdown in relationships. It has been it unearthed whatever was there. It took the top layer off, and people are not able to deal with day-to-day functionality like they were before. Things that they were able to zip through, whether financially, emotionally, physically, people are struggling. They're just struggling. There is a concept in the mental health and physical health field that's called COVID brain. where people
Okay.
who were high functioning, they see themselves as slowed. They're having problems with the retention and retaining and recalling. They're having issues with task management. So yeah.
Okay. So how can we raise awareness about the unique challenges faced by the Black community in relation to mental health?
I think it's a one-on-one kind of situation, right?
Mhm.
It's the people, if you see your person struggling, and I always say, if when I used to work at the Army base, actually ask somebody, do you need help? And stay there for their response. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? Don't just say, hi, how you doing? Are you okay? And keep walking. Actually look a person in the eye and have a conversation like, I notice you're struggling. Do you need help? And then support them through that. Encourage them through that. Because a
Mhm.
lot of times, a person, and we've all been guilty, like, you need some help, and then like hang up on a person. Like, say if you are having an argument with somebody and you notice your person is off kilter, they're not their self. We'll tell them they need help, but we're not going to walk with them to get the help. And so I think that's a one-to-one conversation that we need to start having with each other in our families and our friendships, and just in our communities. We need to stop allowing people to break down around us and say it's not my problem. Because what I
Mhm.
teach people all the time is that what something happens to someone else is either going to directly or indirectly affect you. It will eventually get to you. You may think that it's not, like a lot of people think, I'll live in a gated community. Well, guess what? When they overrun their community, guess where they're going to come eventually? It's not
Mhm.
enough gates. So we have to understand that we are all connected. So take the time to actually look a person in the eye, ask them if they're okay. And if they're not, walk with them to get help.
Okay, so question from the chat from Notary Nation, Ms. Dawn. Um, when you had mentioned COVID brain, her question was, is that coming from people who have been vaxxed or just in general?
It's just in general, people
Okay,
who have access and people who have not.
okay. Um, Also another question. So I know the pandemic and COVID was brought up. So one of the main things we saw during the pandemic is there seemed to be, I don't want to call it an uprising, but I'm gonna say more awareness as far as inequalities toward Black people with it, with mainly the George Floyd situation that occurred. So how does systemic racism and discrimination impact the mental well-being of Black individuals? And how would you say we can work towards creating a more inclusive and supportive society?
That's a layered response, right?
Okay.
Because we're talking about on a meso, micro, macro level, right? So one-to-one as in our own community, which would be
Mm-hmm.
the meso, the Black community, again, we have to stand up. We can't wait for things to happen to us to have a voice. We can't be afraid to put our bodies on the line for
Mm-hmm.
somebody else, because at one point or another, it's going to be us. I think sometimes we sit back and we're waiting and we're waiting. I'm personally tired of marching. I'm personally tired of marching. I mean,
Right.
I don't see anything happening from marching. I'm over it. And you already know my story. The young man who was murdered by the police earlier this year, Tyree, was actually one of my relatives on the Harris side. I didn't know that he was actually a family member
Mm-hmm.
on my tree. We had a family reunion last year, but his story was just unsettling to our family. And we was talking about it and we just couldn't, and I'll get back to it because I'm old. We was talking about how unsettling it was. And, we kept saying, we got to do something. We got to do something. And for this, I marched for George Floyd. I marched before him. I marched for Trayvon. I've always been an activist about that, but his story hit me emotionally and I didn't know why. And then my cousin, Kathy, reached out and she was like, that was a fallen leaf from our tree. And I was like, man, that hit differently. And so that hit, it overwhelmed our family system. you know, and still it's still going on and different things like that. And we've seen the injustices. So that's the meso. The macro is the community affords us holding our politicians, our local politicians accountable. You know, we have to go and we have to have those relationships with these individuals to let them know that it's not acceptable. You know, we can't cry only again when it's our family member. And as communities like Uptown Denby, where we live, right, we can't be a blind eye to what's going downtown, you know, and then, you know, so we have to join as communities and stand up as a community and say this is wrong. And then the larger system, you know, we got to have the federal laws that protect us. I personally think that we need sovereignty as African Americans or Black people, Aborigines, original people, whatever you would like to call yourself. I think we need sovereignty, no different than the American Indians. We know that the systems are not set up for us to be successful. We know that our interactions have proven themselves to be negative, and it impacts us profoundly. Again, going back to my own personal experience, you know, here recently, I had an unjust situation with the law, and it triggered me. And I told the police officer, you still haven't learned. After all these years and all of these experiences, you still have not learned how to intersect with us. You still have not seen us as a person, as a worthwhile human or being to intersect with and give respect. And you know, it was life-threatening, the situation I had. And had I not had the resolve and had the age on me, I might not have survived that situation.
Right, you would have reacted differently.
I definitely, if I had been a younger version of myself, I would not have survived.
Okay, another question here in the chat is, did you say there's a genetic link for schizophrenia?
There is. There is for all mental health, right? All mental health, just like physical health. And I think that's the issue. I would say for us as mental health providers, we're asking for parity. We're asking that we be treated with the same respect that in regard that you treat physical health, for its pay, for its treatment, for its protection, right? So just like a person has a marker for diabetes or heart disease, you have a marker for bipolar disorder or major depressive disorder or schizophrenia. All of those, even anxiety, you know, you have a marker for that. Autism, you know, you have a marker for it.
Okay. What are some effective strategies or resources available for promoting mental health and self-care within the Black community?
Okay, so I think it's more community-based that's doing the marketing and the education. SAMHSA and National Institute for Health, NAMI, those are all federal organizations that actually fund different grants for mental health and allow CSBs like the one that we have here, which is a community service board, to do some of the work because they get grants from them. But a lot of the education comes from family members, comes from providers who are out here trying to make a difference and intersect. And then from, like, of course, the community service boards, because a lot of times that's a part of the marker that they get for the grant to go out and educate people about what's going on. But, you know, mental health is still treated as a dirty little secret, right? And that people are to be shamed or ashamed for having mental health, when all of us, and I teach my people, we all have a label in the back or a tag in the back of our shirt. And mental health is the same way. You just, when you go to see a provider, you know what your tag says and you know how to take care of yourself, right? Whereas somebody else is in the world and they have no idea because they've never had their tag pulled or identified for them. So they're out there struggling and they're feeling like a failure. They're feeling like they're incomplete. They feel like they're unloved. They're feeling alone, because they've never had anybody pull them in and say, I see you struggling. And it's okay. All of us has something that we're dealing with. The people who actually get treatment just know what the something is.
Okay. So we have another question in the chat, but what I'm going to do is, if someone have a question, Tech, did you want to go ahead and interact and ask the question, or did you want me to? If you want to, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Oh no, I'm just listening to the conversation. Plus, I'm in a position where it's loud, but I'm listening to the answers, so just trying to get my questions in.
Okay.
Because my understanding is just trying to. Sorry about that. Yeah, I'm so distracted right now, but I'm. Just
oh no, you're fine. I won't try to call you out either. You know, you're very forthcoming with speakers. I can go ahead and ask. So his question was that he put in the chat also was, is there a difference between mood disorders and mental health disorders?
No, it's a difference between mental health disorders and behavior health disorders. Okay. And there's a distinction. A lot of times, okay, when we see the school shooters, they say they have a mental health disorder. No, they have a behavior health disorder, right? Okay, so mental health is how your brain is mapped, is how your brain is functioning, how your connectivities, your neurons, your neurotransmitters, your serotonin, your dopamine, that's the mental part, right? And usually that's what we call chemical imbalances. Whereas behavior is if you go shoot up the school. So it's a difference between thinking I'm gonna shoot the school up and actually shooting the school up. When you translate into shooting the school up, now we've moved into behavior. That's not a mental health disorder. They may have had mental health disorder underlying, right? That caused them to have some of the thinking, but they moved to behavior. So it's a difference. That's the difference between, but yeah, mood disorders fall under mental health. Personalities fall under behavior health. I mean, mood disorders fall under mental health. Personality disorders fall under behavior health.
Okay, so with that being said, you distinguishing between those two. And once again, as far as Black mental health, so say for instance, if there is, because usually if there is a school shooting, you know, the first thing is, guess what race it is? So we already know usually what race, and that's not our race, right? So I've heard before a lot of times though, say if a young Black kid has something that's going on with them mental health wise, their parents a lot of times may be at a loss. So how can a parent, especially with kids coming up in these days, you know, they have so many influences, mainly social media, which we didn't have, you know, back in our day. They have so many influences around them. So how would you say possibly, just, you know, general, nothing very specific, but generally, how can a Black family help to uplift and support a child who may seem like they're showing signs of, or beginning signs of mental health disorder?
Okay, so you can intersect two different ways, right? Okay. So if the problem is presented more in school, like here in Virginia, we have the 504, right? So you would have the person evaluated, and then you will have a special education plan that you could have your child worked on. So when they're in school, they can have the extra support that they need. Or you get with a child psychiatrist and start the process of seeing if it is a chemical issue. And if it's not, then we will get with therapy. And then we would do work on the behavior modification. So a lot of times, like I said, when I'm dealing with children, I have to tease out, is it a structural issue or if this is a child issue? Meaning structural issue, meaning that the parental structure is faulty. And so it allows the child to have behavior that's not applicable or appropriate. So if it's a structural issue, I do a lot of reparenting with the parent. And it's not to shame the parent, it's to say that, you know, sometimes we don't know what our child needs from us. And we're trying to apply something that doesn't work. You know, between us, we have 4 kids. And so like, when I think about our kids, we have, I think about our oldest son, he never got in with me, he never got in any trouble. He was such a loving baby. And now, you know, it's like we have to talk more to him than everybody else, but still a loving, we had really good kids, right? So then we had one that I felt like I got her one time and she was good. And then our baby boy, he was a lot of energy. And then, the baby, she's taking me through, right?
Mhm.
So every child it needs something different from you. And it's like, how do you meet the child? And so when I'm working with the parent, because it's a structural thing, I'm
Mhm.
saying to your parent, what is it that your child is trying to express to you? Because all behavior is communication. So if they're acting out, what are they trying to get that they're not getting from you? And we old fashioned parents, like, oh, you're gonna do what I say, period.
Mhm.
And you know how I do it. But still, even in that, after we get them to do what we ask them, we have moments behind that to say, what is it that you were trying to say that caused you to be so frustrated? Because a lot of times the behavior that they're displaying is frustration. They don't have the verbiage to actually communicate why they're feeling or behaving the way they do. And so we're forcing them to do what we want, and that's that power struggle.
Mhm.
But I always tell parents, our job is to outwit and outlast, because we don't have their energy level. So we got to understand, if we keep fighting with them, they're going to wear us down. They got more energy. So what we do, we have to disengage, allow them to burn out, and then re-engage them. And it's the same thing in the school systems. A lot of times teachers are so hell-bent on trying to get the child to comply.
Mhm.
The child has more energy. And not only that, it becomes a copycat situation, because now you got another child saying, oh, well, that worked for her, so I'm
Mhm.
gonna do the same thing. You got one teacher with 30 students, you're gonna get wore out. So you disengage. You don't even stop the conversation with them. Okay, whatever. And then when they bring their behavior down, then you re-engage them. So the child psychiatrist is one, and then the school
Mhm.
system for the IEP evaluation is another one.
Okay. All right. So, what specific factors contribute to higher rates of mental health issues among Black individuals, and what can be done to reduce these disparities?
I think it's the original sin of America. It
Mhm.
contributes to why it's, and I would say this. This is my personal opinion,
Mhm.
right? As a professional in going to HBCU, right? It feels as though when we had more pressures on us, we didn't have as many mental health issues, and that's because we didn't have time to see how we felt, right? When
Mhm.
you actually in the field, and when you actually are working in the factories and you don't have time, by the time you get home, you was physically exhausted, right? And so now people have more time to focus on how they feel. And in the last 20, 25 years, we have been taught to tap into how we feel. It's like what you're saying, what we're doing today. How you feel, are you taking care of your mental health? We didn't have time to do that before. So I
Mhm.
think mental health is always there, but we were in survival mode. And so just like I was saying, post-COVID, when your survival mode is expiring and you're getting into being able to breathe, that's when you see things come up. And so I think it's always been there. It's just now more pronounced because people have time to focus on it.
Okay. I'm loving your questions, Cameo. Like, you can just come off with it. It's not like I love it that you about your stuff. That's one thing I can say about you. And that's how you know the difference between somebody who's actually passionate about what they do versus someone who, is just so systematic when it comes to, doing it more as just a job, versus it being their passion. So one thing I will say though, because a lot of the people that I see are on here now, and really a lot of the things that Notary War Room, the founder, Tiger, he is very much into, entrepreneurship and everything. And a lot of us on here, or most of us, if not all of us, were entrepreneurs, right? Black entrepreneurs. You are also that. You're also an entrepreneur yourself. So how, as far as Black entrepreneurship, do you feel that, especially if we're having, our twists and turns going on from here and there, how would you say, as a Black entrepreneur, someone can deal with, as far as, I guess, early stages, if they feel getting to that point that they're breaking down? What are some of the things you think, Black entrepreneurs should do to help keep their head above water? Not necessarily as far as the financial side, but, you have to have your mind in a certain place in order to be able to keep your business going and keep yourself going.
Okay, so yeah, that is very difficult. I would say it's two things. You got to have somebody who understands entrepreneurship,
Mm-hmm.
and you have to have somebody who allows you to get away from it, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't always need somebody who is what I call a Bible thumper,
Mm-hmm.
God going. Sometimes you just need to be able to identify how you feel. It's not that you don't have to do the work, but you need to have the ability to voice what you're experiencing.
Mm-hmm.
In order to change something, you have to be able to identify it. And if you're around people who don't allow you to be honest about your experience, and they want you to be something else in a nice package for them to make them comfortable,
right,
you can't really ever get the help that you need because you're so buttoned up to make somebody else okay. So you need to be around people who allow you to be you, to what I call emotionally and physically butt naked with someone. You need to be able to have a space to be you and be broken or challenged or overwhelmed or hurt, injured or afraid, and someone don't belittle you or try to undercut you or try to sideways what they call support you, encourage you. You could do better. I can't believe you there. You just need somebody to just allow you to speak your experience.
right.
And then, you have that opportunity. A lot of times you'll come to your own answers from that, right? Another thing that I would say, I have a business that I never really get off the ground, which is ING Life for Tomorrow, is engaging. You have to physically be engaging your life. So you can't just have what you do and nothing else. You always have to have variations of what you're doing, because we are a whole pie, but there are sections of us, and our ownership is just a section of our pie. So we don't want that to bleed over. You know what I'm saying? Because if you cut an undone pie or pie that just came out the oven, if you cut it too soon before it gels, it bleeds over. So you got to have other things that you're engaging. Before COVID, I love to go outside the country. And I still love to travel, but I just do a lot of traveling by car.
Right, right.
I'm trying to convince myself to get on a plane at some point. But, you got to have other things that you're engaging. For me, I like to craft. So I'm making shirts. I'm making cups. This is my new cup girl from last night. Making bottles and, but that's also a business of mine that I got into because everybody was like, well, you should start selling it. I was like, okay. So it helps me to help small business. Some people like cooking, gardening, biking, swimming, something ING. If it's an ING, it's helping you to engage your life. And that helps keep the balance. You got to have people like you and me where we could just go on each other's couch and lay down and take a nap. You know what I'm saying? Look, what you doing? Nothing. Let me go here and take a nap. And it's just being in the presence of somebody that you know that you're loved. Because ultimately, when you're in this kind of business and you're working for yourself, you got to have people that's going to be there with you if you got $10 million or 10 cents.
Right. That's preaching to the choir. So I have to say amen to that. Most definitely. Okay. Let me ask you this. So you had mentioned, which I think I posted before on my page when you made one of your cups for me, the Bitch Be Gone spray, matter of fact. But you have mentioned about you creating items. And I know for a fact that you do t-shirts and stuff. For you all, you can see the t-shirt that I have on. She actually made this for, I think, a Mother's Day a year or so ago. But it actually has the Wonder Woman symbol in the middle, and it actually spells mom. So this is one of her creations here. And that, so I'm gonna get you to go ahead and just tell them quick about that. And then I do have a question also for you.
Okay, yeah, that's Tuesday Serendipities. I was trying to get my Linktree together, but Linktree wouldn't let me be great. I'm on TikTok, I'm on Facebook, and I'm trying to do better, you know, but as Tahisha know, I've been going through a storm in the last 6 months. And so it has not allowed me to be great. All the things I had planned for this year has been kind of hitting little hot hills and valleys. And y'all know that as being business owners. But Tuesday Serendipities is steering away from just individual to I'm trying to help small businesses that cannot afford high-end merchandise items. Like, so again, I cups, t-shirts, I could do yard flags, I could do business cards, hats, pillows, I could do pretty much anything. I could print on hard, soft, sublimation, as well as UV, DTF, and DTF. So Tuesdays is, and it's also my passion for it, is just being able to make something because it gives my creative space. I'm a licensed cosmetology of 31 years I'm licensed with my cosmetology license. And so I don't do hair anymore. So it allows me to have that creative space and it allows my mind to pull away from all the things that I hear throughout the day.
Okay, real quick, we have someone who would like to share something. Did you want to do that on Notary Nation? Did you want to do that? Unmute yourself and go ahead and share.
Yeah, it's too much to type.
Oh, okay.
So thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just wondering if I could share this, what happened, what my family experienced. And just wondering if you could give any advice on how we can support my daughter. So this was at 3:00 in the morning when my phone rang this morning. The police had walked into my daughter's condo. Now, mind you, my daughter lives in Bel Air, Maryland. You know, she's in a very nice area. She's on the 12th floor and she travels for a living. So she was getting ready to catch her 6 a.m. flight. She was in the bathtub. The police just walked into her place. So she lives alone. She had already boarded her little dog and stuff, you know, she's getting ready for her flight. She's in the tub and she just hears these men walking through her place. And so, of course, you know, she freaks out and they didn't have any sort of respect for the fact that she was in the tub. They were, you know, she's asked them like, what are y'all doing here? Basically, she was traumatized. Okay. When she called me, she was hysterical. Okay. And all day today, because mind you, she still has her obligations. She's a regional manager, you know, she has to be there. She had to go ahead and she missed that first flight, but she went on her second flight. And I've been talking to her all day off and on as she's traveling to her destination. And this has really, really affected my daughter. My daughter is 31, you know, professional. Like I said, she lives alone. She lives in an affluent area. And you know, she just feels extremely violated, and so do I. And, you know, I'm just wondering, because we've been talking to her, of course, all day long, but I was wondering if you had any suggestions on how we can just kind of encourage and support her to kind of, you know, you're okay. Let's thank God for that. And just, you know, kind of get her mind right, because this is not looking good. You know, it's after 3:00 and I'm literally still texting her right now while I'm on the Zoom with you guys. She's like really, really upset, and I don't blame her, of course, but just wondering if you had any words or anything you could offer me that I could possibly offer her during this time. Thank you.
Well, one of the things I would say is that she's physically okay, right? She's physically, but mentally she's not. She's been traumatized. And so that's the thing that we oftentimes do. We're like, well, you're okay, right? Because we don't see a physical injury, but she's had a emotional injury. And so she has to be able to give verbiage to her experience. And that may take time because like with grief and loss, right? So she's grieving her sense of safety, right? She's grieving the sense of security, her sense of person. Her person was violated. Anytime your home is violated, you don't feel safe in your home anymore. Not even if they catch the person, you looking around the corner, you come in and look at the place that was broken in because my house been broken in. You look at the window, you're like, okay, the window was there, so nobody's in here. And it takes time. Grief and loss is not linear. She may get to a place where, okay, well, they was looking for the wrong person. So, okay, I get it. And then she could go right back to anger. Then she go to like, but why? Why was, they in my house? So it's just allowing her to go through the emotionality of it and try not to make it okay for her. Just allow her to explore it and just support and just listen. Just listen and allow her to vacillate between all the different areas. I would definitely tell her to journal it. And then she needs to go to internal affairs. And she needs to tell her story to internal affairs because they need to investigate why did they walk into her home without a warrant and question her about anything. So then she could begin the process of I've done all that I did or could do to protect myself or to rectify the wrong. But it's going to take her a while to feel safe in her space again and just allow her to go through that. She may have problems sleeping in her house. That's normal for a home invasion because you don't know how did they get in there? Can they get in here again? If they got in here, who else could get in here? So all of that questioning will happen.
Well, it was the police that came in, and she also had her door was unlocked. So they just literally just walked in. They didn't knock first or any of that. They just walked right in. So yeah, I definitely will ask her to go to internal affairs about those two men who didn't even allow my child to put her clothes on. And had no business in there in the first place. But, like I said, she travels for a living. So literally, even though she pays entirely too much for that place, but she's only there about a week out of the month. Like she's always traveling. So I hear you when you say, she may not even feel safe there. It's barely her home because again, she's always gone. So I'll definitely go to her with that. And I appreciate you taking some time to offer something for my family and I.
You're welcome. Now, know this, if she travels all the time, with PTSD and trauma, right? Adjustment disorder, that energy transfers. So she's going into a hotel room, right? And so she had this experience. So again, it is the five senses. So it does not have to be the same situation to cause the same type of evocation. So if she is calling you in the middle of the night because she's like, I just can't sleep, it's probably because she feels unsafe even in the room.
Well, it just happened. Like it just happened this morning. So she called me right after it happened. You know what I'm saying? Right. So tonight would be our first night since this happened while she's out, on the road doing what she has to do for a living. But yeah, it's I think the terrorists have successfully traumatized my family. Like she keeps saying anything could happen to me, and she's correct. And again, they had no reason to just walk in. They didn't knock or anything. She was wide awake. She was preparing for her flight. Had they knocked, she would have heard them. They just walk in and she just hears these voices like, whoa, so the whole experience start to finish has really just like, I don't know. We're shook.
Yeah. Just allow her to go through it. She may call you. And like I said, a lot of times people do not see the after effects of a trauma until time has passed. And that's how PTSD was actually diagnosed in combat when they transferred it from sexual trauma to combat, is that it was after the war, 6-7 months, a year, 2 years, and then the person was still struggling. Just like with a sexual trauma, a person was still struggling with touch and proximity and intimacy and different things. And so they was like, well, that happened years ago. And that's why it's called post-traumatic stress disorder, because the event has already passed. And then the allotted 6 months to adjust, and aren't they gracious, 6 months to adjust has passed. And so when you have the event, that's what you call a acute situation. And then from the acute situation, you move into the adjustment period. If the person doesn't resolve their issues within that 6 months of the adjustment period, we start looking at PTSD.
Okay.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Did anyone else have any thing they wanted to say or a question they wanted to ask at the moment? Okay, if not, Cameo, then once again, how can we find you? We have it posted here as far as following you on TikTok and also Facebook. Are you on IG, Instagram?
Yeah, but I'm on the
Right.
Tuesday. I gotta do my whole, I'm gonna get my life. I'm gonna get my life. I'm gonna get my life. I am gonna get the life together. I have teenagers, we got them teenagers at home. I be trying to encourage them to help their old mama, but they ain't with my program. So I'm over here struggling and keeping my life together. I wanted to bring up to you all how I feel like you guys could be a vital part in what we do in mental health, right? Especially on my community side. I've talked to Tahisha about it. I think the notaries could really play a crucial part, especially with people who find themselves incarcerated in hospitals behind mental health. I've encouraged her to set contracts with some of the ALFs, some of the hospitals, some of the behavior centers, some of the agencies like myself to come in and talk to our people before to do some paperwork, some executive orders or some guardianships ahead of time before these people actually lose everything. Because a lot of times when a person becomes distable, what we call dysregulated, and they start being symptomatic, they end up in a hospital, in a prison, or some type of institution. They lose everything. They lose their housing, they lose their health care, they lose all these different things because they have no one to take care of their business. And so then when they come out, you start from ground zero again. And so here in Newport News and Hampton Roads area, housing is a huge issue now. Back in the day, we didn't have no problem with housing. Nowadays, to find a house, affordable one, even the rooms for rent now is $700. And most of our people are only getting $600 for their SSI. So to lose a housing that they have, like a rooming house for $200, that's a third of their income, and then come out and then they have to pay $150 more than what they had, when we could put some guardianship and some executive orders in place so these people can have the care that they need while they're getting help. And so I would encourage you all in your localities to really look at setting up them, what we call MOUs, memorandum of understanding, with these agencies, as they bring people on and they know the people have a history of hospitalization, or if they have what we call severe symptomatic or acute behavior, that you put those things in place. And it will work well for you guys because, of course, you will set your own rate. And if you partnership and you contract with the actual agency versus the person, you probably could command a higher rate. So I would definitely say that, even the CSBs here locally, like it's a need, because when they come out of the hospital, it is a dog fight to get all kind of medications in place, housing in place, clothing, food. It's just a piece of work. So I would encourage that for you guys.
Okay, and I've typed in the chat, memorandum of understanding, set up contracts with agencies for notaries, or as far as for notarizations for those. Thank you very much for that. Let me see what else. Did you have anything else that you had wanted to add as far as Black health Black mental health, or just mental health in general, anything that necessarily comes to mind that a lot of people are facing right now?
I would definitely, I would say this. I'm sorry not to cut you off.
No, you're fine.
I want to encourage people, if you seek help and someone identifies that you are a person who could benefit from medication, take it. Don't get in no dog fight about, I don't want to take no pills. I can do it by myself. If you have a chemical imbalance, it's no different than me having a low functioning thyroid. If I don't take my Synthroid, my hair gonna fall out. I'm gonna have heat stroke, heat flashes. I'm gonna have memory issues. I'm gonna have weight gain. I'm gonna have some libido issues, which we all know we don't want them problems in our 40s. It's a plethora of issues that you'll have. I think that's one of the biggest things in our community. And I get that we feel like we have been used as guinea pigs. But if you have a chemical imbalance, your brain no longer makes that chemical. So it is impossible. It is impossible for your brain to function the way that it used to. You got one or two options. Either you could accept the new you and know that you're going to have some dysregulation, or you can take your medicine and live your best life. That's I can't encourage it more. That's one of the biggest issues that we have within our community, is getting our people to understand we ain't trying to we here at Available Mental Health is not trying to poison you. We're not trying to be adversarial. Our med providers are experts in medication, not you. They're telling you the best medication according to what the symptoms you said that you're facing. Now, you may do some trial and errors, no different than my doctor do trial and errors with my thyroid to find the right option that works well for you. But take your medicine. If they say you need medication, take the medicine. It's no different than a diabetic saying, I'm gonna drink some water. Okay. And it's just that serious. We have to understand that mental health is as serious as physical health. It is a mind, body, spirit treatment. And you have to have at least two of those functions working well. So if you physically are down, your mental and your spiritual got to be strong. If you mentally are down, your physical and your spiritual has to be a unison type thing with those three domains. So take your medicine, people. Please take your medicine.
Thank you so much for that. Cameo, and you went ahead and you also, so in the chat, for anyone who's on here, you have the option to contact her actually on TikTok. So we have a TikTok link in the chat, Facebook link in the chat, both Tuesday Serendipities, as far as also being able to contact her. Everything else, once you at least follow her, you'll be able to get up to date or updates on how, everything's progressing. So you can go ahead and plug in and get some of those products that she has. The good thing about her also is if you want to see about getting promotional products for your business, she can do that in small amounts. A lot of times, when it comes to getting promotional products, some people are a little bit apprehensive because they don't want to have 250, items being printed. You may just want 10 just to see, what kind of traction you get or something like that. She is small business friendly, friendly as far as an entrepreneur, and willing to go ahead and, create items in smaller quantities for you. Also, you can go ahead and follow me on Facebook, City Center Notary, also City Center Notary on IG. That's for my notary business, also for my small business services business and tax preparation, TD Alliance. I have that in the chat as far as the link, my landing page for that, which you can use to schedule an appointment or anything, just to let you all know, because I have posted it before, I think in my stories. But if you are due a you possibly could be due a refund, say for like 2019. The IRS, due to COVID back in 2020, when they had gave us the 3-month extension to file, that 3-month extension has also been for 2019. So you actually have until July I'm looking at my calendar here. Oh, I think it's July the 17th is what they're giving you to file. So if you know someone, you may know someone who possibly has not filed 2019 yet, they could be due a refund. If you have it post-dated or dated by postmark by July the 17th, because it's going to have to be mailed at this point, can't be electronically filed, you can go ahead and still get your tax return prepared. So I am doing still 2019 tax returns. If you want to do that, you can check TD Alliance for that. Other than that, Cameo, we thank you. Tiger Toledo, thank you so much for this platform and the opportunity to bring this to light. It was very, even though I know Cameo, her answers and, to the questions, they were very enlightening, still even for me. And if no one else had any more questions here on the Notary War Room, then we are out. And thank you so much for attending. You all have a good day.
Thank y'all.